Hey guys, this is the Groove Guru podcast. I am Windsor and thank you for tuning in today. In this solo cast, I want to talk about groove, though not necessarily in the way that it's usually talked about. Like my other solo casts, I want to address some practical aspects of the topic and also go into some mindset shifts that can really make a positive difference when it comes to the subject. And today's subject will be groove. And I want to use the metaphor, the heart of the groove, to point to some insight that I and other people find very helpful and also very practical, not just in music, but in other aspects of life. So, first of all, groove from a musical perspective. There are a lot of components to groove, we could say, and how you can have and develop a great groove musically. For example, we could describe a component of great groove as having consistent tempo, being accurate with your subdivisions, practicing with and without a metronome, and being able to place your notes wherever you choose in relation to the beat, for example, deliberately behind or ahead of the beat. There's also the aspect of locking in with other musicians and how well you do that. And a big part of that being, playing patterns that fit and support the music, accenting events and phrases musically, and things like leaving space for the vocal, especially if you're playing songs, and also having a great instrument sound. And the required technique is definitely a part of having a great groove. So is, practicing until you're confident in your musical abilities to the point you don't need to think about what you're doing, which helps in you being more relaxed. And again, other things when it comes to having a great groove, learning, listening to great players who have a great groove and learning not just from them, but also finding a mentor, at least someone you can work with in person to help you coach yourself to take your groove and playing to the next level. So, these are all things practically that musically you could relate to as having a great groove. And it is very practical. After all, when it comes to being able to play music and groove, it's not about miming. It's not about you being on top of the pops or fill in the blank show. It's like you have to be able to actually play. And it is a matter of practice. And that goes without saying. Now, the angle I want to approach groove from here largely relates to the mind and psychological aspects of it and how we understand that and some of the principles behind it. And beyond just the psychological or the intellectual understanding, what I'm going to point to can have a really profound practical effect musically, on stage and also off stage, which, as we know, is a huge part of working as a musician. For performers in any field, any area of performance, indeed, including musicians, as that's the main focus of this episode, is that we've probably all heard accounts of performers answering the question, what was going through your mind when you gave that amazing performance on that occasion, perhaps a live show or on a recording. And very often the answer is, I wasn't thinking of anything in particular. Things like the music, the art, the words, the performance, they just flowed through. And the common term to describe such a space or a state is being in the zone, which, as I see it, is the real heart of the groove. And I want to talk more about being in the zone and accessing that space regularly in music in life so that it becomes a core element we realize of how we can live our life and show up in our moment to moment experience in a way that always helps our best performances to arise from. Okay. And a key point here is that we all have access to that space. It's not just reserved for the elite performers who certainly do access that space, but we all have access to the zone, the heart of the groove, so to speak. And it's where all of our best performances come from. And it's available to all of us here in the moment. So, being in the zone, another way to relate to being in the zone is when the mind is calm. So, calmness is really key here. And if calmness is really key, how do we readily access such calmness? Well, one of the most empowering and enlivening answers I've found is to understand and look at the source of where feelings come from. And you might wonder, what does knowing about my feelings have to do with groove? And it does relate to groove and performing at your best. So I invite you to hear me out here. So, contrary to what many people believe, our feelings don't come from circumstances, events, people, places, or things. And one of the most practical and profound things I've realized is that our feelings, our experience, it comes from our thinking. And we're always living in the feeling of what our thinking is doing. So whenever we use our mind to think, we create stories and meaning about things in life. And when we go into our thinking, it creates our emotions and feelings, which are brought to life via our senses. For example, if we think about the past or future, we have feelings about that. Perhaps happy memories of being with family or loved ones, memories of things we've achieved that we're proud of. And it's just as easy to create experiences that we don't enjoy so much. For example, many people thinking about the future and things that we are to do. It's commonplace for many people to default to worrying and feeling anxious about the future. Though you can certainly feel positive anticipation about it too, like things you're looking forward to do. And again, the point is that our feelings are coming from thought. They don't come from the past or the future, events or circumstances. It's really, that's just what our mind is doing because we feel what our thinking's doing. So to use another example, if we have a phobia about something, perhaps snakes, to use an Indiana Jones reference, in that case, is it really snakes that make us afraid, or is it our thoughts about them? It's really our thoughts. Well, how do we know that for sure? If it was snakes that made us afraid, and it was the snake that transmits those feelings to us, then surely everyone would be afraid of snakes. That's just not the case. Yes, there are people who are afraid of snakes, but there are also people such as zoologists who are fascinated by snakes and love studying them and learning about them. And it's a source of great pleasure for them. And what I'm pointing to here is a myth that the perception that our feelings are created from something external, things, places, circumstances, people, and events. It's a lie, really. And okay, I admit the word lie, it's a bit of a dramatic word, but I want to use it to emphasize this point that I want to make here. And again, the truth is that our feelings come from thought. And beyond just understanding that intellectually, like, yeah, that makes sense. there's a deeper way we can realize that and really experience that that helps us get into the heart of the groove, the zone. So when we wake up to the truth beyond our thinking, that's how we access the zone, which is just a few words. But there is a more experiential place that I'm pointing to, which that metaphor, the heart of the groove, points to, which again, that's just a few words. But what I'm pointing to is beneath those words. And how do we access that space very practically? Well, when we wake up to that our feelings are coming from what we're thinking about, we have an insight and we naturally get calm. When we let go of what we're thinking in the moment, we change our focus from the content of what we're thinking, the form, to the context, which is the space in which we think, the formless. And when we realize what's beyond what's on our mind, we access a clarity that's always within us. And when we clear our head this way, we have nothing on our mind. We naturally realize calmness, and we start to listen better because there's nothing on our mind that's in the way. We listen better to the music we're playing, to other people we're with, and we connect with life on a deeper level. And when we let go of our thinking, we naturally access the space known as the zone, which it's the space of the infinite creative potential that you are, where all your creative ideas come from. It's the same source that all of the greats connect to, and it's always within. Another word for that is it's a space of pure presence that we always give our best performances from. Now, I'm not suggesting that we never ever go into thinking in conceptual mind. Good luck with that. The mind is a tool and it's a useful one. We need it to make plans, solve problems, and deal with things that come up in life. And what I'm pointing to is there's a huge difference between using the mind solely from the state of constantly being preoccupied with our thinking and believing that those feelings that our thinking is creating is the ultimate truth about life. It's our experience of life. Yeah. So the distinction is comparing being in thinking to the clarity of knowing that space that thought occurs in, pure presence. You could call it pure consciousness. And the shift is having that as our fundamental reference point for using the mind. And when we wake up to that space, that our feelings are coming from thought, and we let go of what we were thinking about, we have insight. And again, we're naturally calm and we access our wisdom. There's a common sense in that it's the foundation of all of our minds and the most effective place to show up from calmness rather than being lost in the constant changing landscape of our thinking, and again believing that's the only reality. And when a person is unaware of this deeper space that always creates new and fresh thinking and the potential to think differently and be differently. When you don't realize that context, it's all too easy to hold on to thoughts that don't serve us and not know that you're doing that. For example, comparing yourself to others. It could be, whatever musician or performer it is, doing that unfavorably and thinking that you're not good enough to do something. It could be thinking that you can't do something because you're just a certain way as a person. That's the way you're wired. When you start to become aware of thoughts and feelings you have that are not helpful, and notice that the feeling of that is just because of what your mind has been doing, one of the most practical things I've found is that whenever my mind goes somewhere unhelpful like that, or maybe there's a bit of worry or some upset or tension that my thinking's created, I've learned to realize that those feelings are all coming from thought. And I let go of my thinking. And again, when I do that, my head clears, I get quiet. And from that space of inner clarity where I've let go of those thoughts that can get in the way of taking action, what shows up is new, fresh thought that from that space I act on, I take action. And that calm, clear space is the zone or the heart of the groove where we always give our best performances from. And again, it's very practical. When you drop thought and your head clears, you listen better to music and other people, and you connect with what you're doing more deeply and creatively. And again, it practically from that space of calmness, it's the ideal space to take action from. Because again, we do need to act and practice to create the results that we want. To summarize some of these points, what we're feeling is coming from what we're thinking about, not things in the world outside us. Life is neutral. As Shakespeare famously said, nothing is good or bad, only thinking makes it so. And when we start to realize the truth at the heart of that, we live from calmness more and more, the zone. And when we become that we already are, we experience all of the freedom to use our mind and the creative potential that we need to develop the skills, the groove, relationships with people, and create whatever it is that we want in the world. So, as that reminder, when you get present, your best performance and groove, it comes out naturally. And it's always beyond your thinking and your conceptual mind. There's a space, always that space, which is where you most deeply connect with life and not just find, but become the heart of the groove.